2:17 in the morning. A kitchen in Indiana, 1955. The overhead light stays off. Only the small bulb above the stove burns, casting a yellow circle on the counter. A woman sits with cold coffee, not reading, not praying, listening for an engine in the driveway, for how the door will close. That sound will tell her everything about the next 2 hours. 1 in 4 American marriages in the 1950s held a husband who could not stop drinking. These wives survived it alone, with tactics whispered between women, never written down. She started with the children. That was always the first thing a wife locked down, the words they were allowed to say outside the house and the words they were not. Daddy has the flu. Daddy worked late. Daddy is resting. The script was rehearsed the way other children rehearsed the Pledge of Allegiance, every morning before school. She checked their answers the way she checked their shoes. The child learned to listen for the sound of ice cubes hitting a glass at 4 in the afternoon. That sound meant take your little brother upstairs. That sound meant do your homework in the bedroom. A 6-year-old who could read the mood of a room by the weight of a footstep on the porch. A 10-year-old who knew that the angle of a briefcase by the front door meant he had not gone to work. Today, psychologists call that hypervigilance. In 1955, nobody called it anything. It was just what the children knew. A boy who learned to read a room before he learned to read a book. A girl who understood silence as a second language before she ever studied one in school. But the children were not the only ones performing. The wife had a routine of her own, and it began before the sun came up. Every morning after a bad night, she had one job. Get him up right, get him dressed, get him out the front door before the neighbors saw. Folger's coffee brewed strong enough to hold a spoon straight. A cold washcloth pressed to the back of his neck. His work shirt already ironed and draped over the kitchen chair. His steel-toed boots by the door. His metal lunchbox packed before midnight. Thermos of black coffee, 2 sandwiches wrapped in wax paper, an apple. All of this finished before the children came downstairs. The screen door closed behind him at 6:45, and the street looked normal. A man missing 3 days of work at a GM plant in Flint or a steel mill in Gary could be terminated on the spot. No severance, no appeal. His paycheck was not a luxury. It was the mortgage, the gas bill, the grocery tab at the A&P. She did not get him to work out of devotion. She got him to work because without that paycheck, the house went dark. That morning routine was not love. It was math. And once the paycheck was earned, the next fight started. Getting to it before the tavern did. Payday was Friday. Most factory men and tradesmen were paid in cash envelopes or paper checks. The corner tavern and every working-class neighborhood in America had one, cashed checks for free. Because every dollar cashed at the bar became a dollar spent on Schlitz or Pabst Blue Ribbon at 30 cents a glass. So she timed it. She drove to the plant gate or walked to the shop entrance and waited for the shift whistle. Standing at the chain-link fence, the car idling, a full week of wages in a brown envelope. $45 to $60 for a factory man in 1955. She needed that envelope in her hand before he walked 2 blocks east. Some weeks she got there first. Some weeks she did not. The difference between a paid electric bill and a dark house was a 10-minute head start on a Friday afternoon. But the money she intercepted was only the visible money. The real survival fund was hidden somewhere he would never look. A Folgers coffee can tucked behind the flour canister. a rolled $5 bill safety pinned inside the lining of her winter coat hanging in the hall closet, an envelope taped flat beneath the sewing machine cabinet, coins dropped into a mason jar buried under the back porch step. Never large sums. 50 cents here, $1 there, skimmed from the grocery money over weeks and months. Some women kept a second passbook account at a savings and loan across town, opened under a maiden name if the teller did not ask too many questions. After a year of hiding, the total might reach $40. In 1956, $40 was a Greyhound bus ticket, 2 nights at a motor court, and a week of groceries. She called it just-in-case money. What she meant was the day the math finally stops adding up. Today, the average American woman has $3,000 in a personal savings account. In 1955, that hidden $40 was everything between staying and having somewhere to go. She was not planning escape most nights. She was managing containment. And sometimes containment meant getting to the bottle before he finished it. A fifth of Seagram's 7 Crown behind the furnace in the basement. Calvert Extra on the shelf in the back of the garage behind the paint cans. She found them the way she found everything in that house, because she was the one who cleaned every room. She poured out an inch from the top, replaced it with tap water from the kitchen faucet. Did the same thing the next night, and the next. A fifth of whiskey cost $3.40 in 1957. If she diluted it by a third over the course of a week, she bought 1 or 2 extra nights of quiet. She never poured a full bottle down the drain. An empty bottle triggered rage faster than anything else in the house. A slowly weakening bottle just made him drink a little more and fall asleep a little sooner. It was sabotage so quiet it barely counted as action, but it was the one variable she controlled in a house full of things she could not. 5 tactics in, and not a single one involved asking anyone for help. Not one involved speaking the truth to another living soul outside the house. Every strategy was silent. Every strategy was solitary. She managed the drinking the same way she managed the weekly budget and the children's school clothes as one more chore that simply had to be done. In 1955, there was no common word for what she was doing every day. Today, they call it survival. Back then, they just called it marriage. But she was not always alone. In many neighborhoods, the women on the block had a system. They never named it. They never had to. A rotary phone ringing at 9 on a Friday night. A neighbor's voice, just calling to check on that pie recipe for Sunday. That sentence was code. It meant he is on his way home, and it sounds bad tonight. The woman 2 doors down who left her back door unlocked without being asked. The sister-in-law on the next street who kept a spare bed made up year-round. No 911 to call. Most American towns did not have a centralized emergency number until the late 1960s. If the police came at all, they told her to calm down and told him to sleep it off. A 1956 study of domestic disturbance calls in Chicago found that officers intervened in fewer than 1 in 10 cases. So the women built their own system. A porch light left on past midnight meant, come over if you need to. They never called it a network. They never called it anything at all. It was just what women on the same block did when the law would not. And when the silence finally became more than she could carry alone, one place existed where she could say the words out loud for the first time in her life. Al-Anon was founded in 1951 by Lois Wilson and Ann B. It met in church basements and community halls. Folding metal chairs arranged in a circle, a pot of Maxwell House on a card table. No sign on the door. The meetings were listed by initials only in the classified section of the local newspaper. AFG, Tuesday, 7 p.m., First Methodist. a wife walked in and heard another woman say the exact sentence she had been swallowing for 5 years. The relief was not in the advice. The relief was in the recognition. By 1960, Al-Anon had registered over 1,000 groups across the United States. Most of the members were wives. She did not go to be rescued. She went to sit in a room where she did not have to lie. Some weeks, that single hour was the only honest thing in her entire life. The family doctor was usually the only professional who saw the full truth. His black leather bag on the kitchen table. Dr. Palmer or Dr. Harrison, every family had a name. He saw the bruise on her forearm and the explanation that did not match. He wrote the word nerves in the chart. In 1955, the most prescribed tranquilizer in America was Miltown, meprobamate, 35 cents a tablet. Doctors wrote prescriptions for anxious wives by the millions. By 1957, Miltown had become the most popular drug in America, accounting for 1 in 3 of all minor tranquilizer prescriptions filled. He treated the wife's anxiety. He did not treat the husband's drinking. The medical profession had a diagnosis for her. It did not yet have one for him. His silence was not cruelty. It was the entire system speaking through one man with a pen. But the wife found her own use for the one building nobody questioned her for entering: the church. Not the priest's advice, which was almost always to pray harder and be more patient. She went for the building itself, a wooden pew at 4 p.m. when the sanctuary was empty, the smell of candle wax and lemon oil on old wood. 30 minutes of silence where no one needed anything from her. No meal to time. No mood to read. The Catholic wives went to confession and told the truth to a man behind a screen who could not see their face. The Protestant wives went to Wednesday evening fellowship and sat in circles with women who understood what silence really meant. She was not praying for a miracle. She was buying time. 1 hour inside a building where nobody was drunk and nothing was about to break. There is a word now for everything these women were doing. Therapists call it codependency. The morning cleanup, the hidden money, the watered bottles, the rehearsed children. Modern psychology would label every one of these behaviors as enabling. But that language did not exist in 1955, and the word enabling assumes she had a real choice. She did not have a choice. She had a mortgage in his name, children who needed shoes, and a culture that said a divorced woman was more shameful than a suffering one. What the textbooks now call dysfunction, she called Tuesday. She wanted out. But wanting and leaving were two different things separated by a wall of law and money. No fault. Divorce did not exist anywhere in the United States until California passed it in 1969. Before that, she had to prove legal grounds: cruelty, adultery, abandonment. Bruises faded before a court date. Neighbors would not testify against neighbors. A divorce attorney cost $200 or more. She had no income of her own. Most American banks would not issue a woman a credit card or open a checking account in her name without her husband's signature. That did not change until the Equal Credit Opportunity Act of 1974. She could not rent an apartment in most cities without a male co-signer. The math was simple. Staying was free. Leaving cost everything she did not have. The women who stayed were not weak. They were doing arithmetic, and the answer kept coming up the same. So she stayed, and every Saturday required the most exhausting performance of her week. His arm around her waist at the church door. Her smile at the neighbor's cookout. A bowl of potato salad carried in Pyrex across the backyard with steady hands. He is just tired, worked a double shift. The children in clean pressed clothes, behaving. The Budweiser he drank openly at the barbecue because outdoor drinking was social and invisible. She counted every can. She counted silently. 3 meant they could stay. 5 meant it was time to make their goodbyes and walk to the car. The drive home in silence. Hands on the wheel at 10 and 2. Today, nearly 25% of adults say they grew up in a household affected by family alcohol abuse. That means most of those Saturday barbecues had more than one wife counting cans, and none of them said a word. The performance was not vanity. A marriage that looked broken in public invited questions she could not afford to answer. And when the bruises came, she had a system for that too. Long sleeves in August, a turtleneck sweater at the 4th of July picnic. Max Factor pancake makeup from the Woolworth's cosmetics counter. 75 cents a compact, applied in layers with a damp sponge over a bruise on the jaw or the forearm. Sunglasses on an overcast morning. I walked into the cabinet door. I slipped on the cellar stairs. Emergency room doctors at the county hospital wrote it down without looking up. No intake form asked who did this to you. No protocol required a second question. The bruise faded in 10 days. The explanation lasted longer than the mark ever did. She was not hiding weakness. She was hiding evidence. Because evidence invited questions, and questions brought consequences that landed on her, never on him. And when the hiding was not enough, when the nights came too close together, she reached for the one person who never asked a single question. Visiting Aunt Ruth for a few weeks. Took the children to see her mother. The suitcase already packed at the top of the hallway closet. The children's clothes folded in first. One change for herself. The coffee can money tucked into the lining. A Greyhound ticket to her mother's town. $4.50 for a regional route in 1958. Her mother met her at the station and did not ask what happened. The spare bedroom was made up already. It was always made up. She stayed a week, sometimes 2, long enough for the bruise to yellow and the promise to arrive by telephone. Then she went back. Her mother never said leave him. She never said stay. She kept the bed made and the door unlocked. That was the entire rescue system for millions of American women. One woman with a spare room and the grace not to say a word. Some wives believed the answer was simpler than that. A new job in the Sunday classifieds, a town 200 miles away where nobody knew them. They packed the house into a rented trailer and started over. New neighbors, a new school for the children. The first month was always better. New surroundings, new energy. The effort that relocation forces out of a man trying to prove the move was not a mistake. By the 3rd month, the bottle was back. A different kitchen, the same sound of ice cubes hitting glass after supper, the same weight of footsteps on an unfamiliar porch. Some families moved 3 times in a decade, chasing a version of him that only existed during the first 6 weeks at a new address. She did not learn that geography cannot fix a man. She learned it over and over. And every time, she repacked the boxes. Every one of these 15 tactics shares something. Not one of them stopped the drinking. The hidden money did not make him sober. The watered bottles did not make him kind. The new town did not make him someone else. These were not cures. They were delays. And the women who used them knew that. They were not confused about what they were doing. They were buying time. Time for the children to grow up. Time for the law to catch up. Time for the culture to change. Or just time for one more quiet night in a house that offered very few of them. They were not waiting to be saved. They were keeping everyone alive until the morning. The most common tactic had no name at all. She simply sat at the kitchen table in the dark and waited for him to come home. 2 in the morning, the stove light on, the sunbeam clock ticking on the wall. A cup of coffee she poured an hour ago gone cold in her hands. She was listening for the car. Not just whether it came, but how. The length of the engine idle told her how long he sat in the driveway working up to coming inside. The car door told her the rest. Slammed meant anger. Left open meant he could barely stand. Then the footsteps on the porch. Heavy was a bad night. A stumble was worse. She could read the next 2 hours of her life from the sound of a man crossing 20 feet of concrete. No one paid her for that shift. No one clocked her in. There was no title for the woman who sat in a dark kitchen every night and listened for the weight of a footstep that would tell her what kind of morning was coming. She did not call it bravery. She called it staying up a little longer. The survival tactics of these women were never printed in Good Housekeeping. No advice column covered them. No therapist named them until decades later. They were invented alone, passed between neighbors in code, and carried out at kitchen tables after midnight by women the world never thought to thank. And somewhere right now, tonight, a woman is sitting at a kitchen table with the light off. The coffee is cold. The clock is running. And she already knows.